In my previous video, I mentioned using dread or fear in RPGs, and how the mechanics don't always work to invoke that feeling. So in this video, I'm going to get into that. This video can be applied to any RPG, but I'm going to focus mostly on the One Ring in D&D. To start off, let's look at the mechanics for fear in those games. Some enemies have the Strike Fear or Frightful Presence abilities. When a character is subjected to one of these features, they must make a roll of some kind to avoid some negative effects. A failure in the One Ring might just mean that a player gains a point of shadow, which doesn't do much immediately, but if lots of shadow builds up, you'll be in trouble. Sometimes dread can have a secondary effect, that means players can't spend hope for the rest of the fight. D&D works similarly, with players having disadvantage while the source of fear is within sight, and they can't willingly move closer to the thing that causes their fear. Now here's the problem I feel. Because this comes down to a dice roll, that player doesn't actually feel afraid if they fail the saving throw, and by the same token, they don't feel brave if they succeed. It just comes down to chance. To get right to the point of how fear should work instead, it's like this. Characters shouldn't feel fear. Players should feel fear. If only the character feels afraid, then the player is likely still going to want to attack the monster or whatever, because that's the game. However, if a player feels afraid, their character likely will as well. So, how do you make an enemy actually frightening? Well, that will probably come down more to narrative than mechanics. Remember, the shadow of the creature is more frightening than the creature itself, so take time to build to the encounter. One of my favorite encounters that I ran for my D&D players had them in this old tower that had been converted into a prison for evil sorcerers. However, an uncontrolled blast of magic released all the prisoners and turned most of them into gibbering mouthers. It was really fun building the scene before the players arrived. I often find it hard to remember to use descriptions much during combat. There's so much going on, it's hard not to let it be just a bunch of dice rolls. However, before getting into combat, there's a nice chance to build the anticipation, or the fear. Those gibbering mouthers are constantly talking and screaming. Reading about them made me think of the headcrab zombies from Half-Life 2, who not only make some standard zombie sounds, but every once in a while you can hear them crying for help, and that makes them all the more horrifying. So I made sure the players heard that echoing through the dark passageways before they first saw one. My players have encountered much higher level enemies before, but this was the first time they were running away without even waiting to see what kind of attacks it might have. I don't even think they lost a single hit point, and yet it was a really fun encounter that was really rewarding for me as a DM and an exciting session for my players. Back to the One Ring, let's take a look at a frightful enemy. Whether it is a wraith or a nameless thing, how can we use descriptions to set a scene that will make players ready to run away? Thinking about the Devourer of the North that I included in the battlefields of Fornost, we can start by having players encountering signs of it before they first see it. Hideously eaten corpses of men and beasts, paw prints of unearthly size, fearful stories from survivors, glowing eyes on the edge of the campfirelight, or maybe a shadowy glimpse of this giant wolf shape on the trail ahead, but when players get there, the creature is gone, and no tracks can be found. Another good way to make players fear a creature is to have them encounter it. The monster attacks during the night when the fire is low, or when one character is separated from the rest. Let the players experience the horrible abilities this creature has. Then, as soon as the company has it outnumbered, the monster runs away, and now a member of the party is wounded and they are far from Sanctuary. Think of the flight to Rivendell after Frodo is stabbed by the Witch King on Weathertop. Maybe the next day the characters cross a dangerous river by using a fallen tree. When they're all over, they look back and see the creature trying to follow them, but it is too heavy, so it disappears into the shadows to find another way across. That should get the players fearing the next encounter. If we come back to talking about game mechanics, this video is not to say that a simple cause fear ability is bad. It's just important to remember that it takes more work than just that. What causes fear will primarily be determined by the hard work that the GM puts in, and then the fear mechanics are a backup to help reinforce that. A fear ability should be viewed more as a tag to remember to run this creature different than others. There are some mechanics that I haven't mentioned yet that will do some heavy lifting to make an enemy frightening, and that is how the game handles healing. If you look at recovering endurance or healing wounds in the One Ring versus healing in D&D, there's a big difference. In the One Ring, if you are wounded, deep in the wilderness, and that creature that attacked last night will be coming back after sunset, well, you're probably going to fear the dark. Whereas in D&D, you can be on death's door and a healing spell or a long rest will get you right back to full HP, so there simply isn't as much to fear there. A game that I have not played but that looks really terrific is the Alien RPG. I'm not fully sure how it works, but when a character gets wounded, there's this big list of injuries that all have different effects and healing times. Similar to the shadow in the One Ring, you might get an injury that's not too bad, but if things are left unchecked, you'll quickly be in a really bad place. What a fantastic system to make your players fear an enemy. Instead of a hit point loss or simply dying, the process gets drawn out, so that players feel the consequences of their actions, but also have time to change how they play. Then there are other options too. Maybe a high level enemy deals an insta-kill on a natural 20, or in previous versions of D&D, some monsters dealt XP loss to characters. I don't love either of those choices, but it's neat to see what else is out there. One of the things I really love about RPGs is that if you don't like some of the rules, you can just change them. So take a look at other games or through forums and use whatever you find to make the game that you're playing the best it can be. If you know of an RPG that has great mechanics that build a sense of fear, or if you have a great memory of a time as a player or GM where there was something really terrifying in your game, please share below. That's all for now. The next video out on this channel should be a review of Ruins of the Lost Realm, and then after that, hopefully my next landmark adventure, which I think will focus on the dwarves of Durin's Folk. Anyways, thanks for watching.